going to look at the Black Plague by reading a little bit about it, but also by watching one of my favorite movies, a film called The Seventh Seal, directed by Ingmar Bergman. We're going to look at the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s, which has a lot of parallels with the COVID-19 crisis that we're seeing today. One of those parallels, excuse me, is that one of the most prominent doctors who figured out the transmission of HIV/AIDS in the 1980s was Anthony Fauci, who was working at ground zero, excuse me, ground zero of that crisis as well. Scott.
Yeah. Dave, I think your cough is contagious. I started coughing right around the same time. Yeah, Dean Jenemann is talking kind of about the recent history that the Ghost Map covers. It kind of covers the rich detail of history of pandemics and folks' reactions to it and the way that we kind of understand disease. So it's going to be a really exciting opportunity to read the moment, right? That's kind of the text that we sent out in the invitation to this event. And it hopefully will generate some really fascinating discussions about lived experiences with these kinds of moments, as well as the kinds of ways that systems and structures do and don't contribute to equitable and just responses to pandemics like this. One of the things that Dean Jenemann and Associate Dean Ian Grimmer, who's not on the call tonight, but Ian Grimmer is the Associate Dean and he oversees curriculum in the Honors College. One of the things that both of them and also the Committee on Equity and Inclusion, which I'm a member of, are really excited about is the fact that this new course that you all will be experiencing for the first time will be an opportunity to kind of engage in historical and contemporary criticism and scholarly work, right? While you're also reflecting on your personal lives. I think that's a really important part of this. I can say from the Committee on Equity and Inclusion standpoint, we're really excited just to be thinking about all of the social impacts of COVID-19, especially at such an interesting time this summer when the ugly head of racism has reared itself in a way that is always visible to some and is becoming more and more visible to others. So it'll be a really interesting time to be studying this content. Dave, I see you're back. Are you good to go?
Oh, I hope so. Sorry, everyone. I have had a allergy-induced cough for the last 4 months, and periodically I get these coughing fits and I can't stop. So apologies for having to leave for a sec. But I could hear what Scott was saying off camera, and excuse me. And I think the other thing about this class that I really like and I've loved teaching over the years is that it gives us an opportunity to really think about how knowledge speaks to us in a contemporary fashion, but also speaks across different historical moments. And so, the perfect book, or we thought the perfect book to start us off, was Stephen Johnson's The Ghost Map, because the book is as much about an epidemic, which is the sort of primary topic of it, but it's also about how knowledge changes and develops by virtue of making connections about different fields of interest and inquiry. And so Johnson uses a term in the book a couple of times. And when you first come across it, it might seem a little bit out of place because it was not one I knew before reading the book, but he uses a term called consilience. And consilience is the way that different fields of knowledge that don't seem to relate to one another can help illuminate a problem. And in this case, for the 1854 cholera epidemic, he talks about how, you needed to have a knowledge of society, a knowledge of science, a knowledge of people's interactions, and it's only because of some fortunate accidents that brought people together with different viewpoints on the world that they were able to figure out how cholera was being transmitted in the 1850s in London. If you haven't read the book yet, it does read a little bit like a great mystery, so I'm not going to spoil how they figured that out. But as you're reading the book, really think about how it is that these different fields that don't seem to have anything to do with one another end up contributing to an understanding of this epidemic that will ultimately change the course of world history. The being able to figure out how certain diseases are transmitted fundamentally, excuse me, transforms how we're able to live together in society. So that's I think a brief introduction to what the book is all about. What the seminar is all about, not just in terms of the topic, but in terms of how we approach it, is that it's a space where we practice what we always say we are in the Honors College, which is being a community of inquiry. Seminars are designed to give people an opportunity to talk to one another, to ask questions, to get agitated about topics, to express opinions. And we hope that you come to the seminar ready to, kind of tear the covers off of books, basically, to get engaged, to get excited, to really find yourself in the different texts, even if it's not necessarily a field that you think you're in or you're interested in. One of the best moments in any seminar is the point where someone sees themselves in a topic or in a field that they haven't really considered before, and it can be transformative and life-changing. And we ask in seminars that we participate, not just as colleagues and as intellectual friends, but as people who are really trying to solve a problem together. It's an approach that I think is one that really defines the Honors College experience. It also characterizes the life of the person whose epigraph you're supposed to be writing about for your first assignment, Walter Benjamin. Benjamin is one of my intellectual heroes. He was a German Jewish writer in the 1930s who ended up not surviving the war. He was trying to make it out of Europe during World War II and couldn't. But he had some great intellectual friendships with people. And I've really been inspired over my life by these intellectual friendships. And so what we hope for the Honors College seminar, which is about how knowledge is generated, is that you start to form these intellectual friendships, that you have those conversations that really get sparked by the material in the class. And that's what we hope to create as a community in the Honors College. I'm going to save my voice until we get to the Q&A session. Scott, do you want to talk a little bit about advising and getting involved? And you got to unmute.
Still learning after all these months. Thank you, Dave. So yeah, I guess I would echo a couple of things that Dave said briefly, and I would invite Tessa to chime in about what it actually looks and feels like from the student perspective. One of the things Dave was talking about, or one of the ways I kind of translate it to an advising capacity is one of the things that it's really important to me to talk to all my students about is depth and breadth, right? Deepening in your major and getting exposure to a lot of different areas, right? And you can do both in the Honors College. In fact, you will do both in the Honors College. In some ways, that's the way in which you will experience both depth and breadth most significantly in your education. And one of the ways you'll do it is in HCOL 85, you have this common experience. It's the only course that every single Honors College student coming in as a first year will end up taking together, right? After your first semester, you're taking all different Honors College courses that you get to choose from semester to semester. And in fact, I encourage you at some point, if you have time, and think of it, to check out what the sophomore seminars look like, right? Or what are the spring semester courses that students have taken in their first year in the past. It's really, like, I have FOMO constantly when I'm looking at these courses. I'm always wishing that I could take them and not just talk to students about them. But the interdisciplinary piece is really important. The depth and breadth piece is really important. And for me, both curricularly and extracurricularly, I'm always interested in hearing from students about what values are driving what they're studying, what values are driving what they're choosing to get involved in outside of class, and how those things intersect or how they're completely separate, right? Sometimes you just want to have your own thing on the side. But one of the things that we have the luxury of doing as honors college advisors, Martha and I, is not just talking about these are the courses you need to take to be on track with your major. Rather, we're talking about what's important to you, right? What are you passionate about? As Martha always says, what are you wanting, right? You're going to hear that if Martha's your advisor. What are you wanting out of your education and out of your life, right? Not just out of a 4-year plan. So, I think that's a brief version of kind of my spiel on what honors college advising is. That means that I do ask students all the time, what extracurriculars are you involved in, right? What do you do outside of school? What's important to you? Those really factor into our advising conversations in really significant ways. One other thing I would say briefly, and then I'd love to hear from Tessa, I kind of frame all of this in terms of exploring, right? If you're undeclared, if you're exploratory, you will work pretty closely with me this year, just in terms of mapping out your first year and beyond and figuring out where you want to go with your time, right? If you're not technically an undeclared student, I encourage you maybe to think of yourself as one a little bit, right? Be open to different classes, to different areas that are totally outside of your expertise. If they're interesting to you, go for it, right? So that's the paradigm that I kind of operate for. I just wanted to share that really briefly. But Tessa, please chime in and tell us what your experience of all of this is, and reflect on anything that Dave and I said. Correct us, modify things, add. What would you add?
Well, first, on the advising note, the peer mentors are another kind of pseudo advising resource to you all. And it's not just your assigned peer mentor. You can come to any of us. We all are from the different colleges at UVM. We all have different majors, different extracurriculars. So we're a great place to go if you're maybe interested in something, but maybe don't want to dive headfirst and kind of want to feel it out. We also know a lot of people on campus as the peer mentors, not only as like in the honors college, but outside. We all take classes in our home college. We already know different professors that if you're interested in one thing, we may be able to point you to, oh, this person's so fantastic for that. So definitely come to us for that. HCOL 85 is a fantastic first year course, and I was reflecting on it this afternoon, and let's be real, college is hard. Okay, I think we all know that, but the transition can sometimes be a little daunting, like, oh, is it going to be the same as high school? Is it going to be like, or am I going to get along with my professors? What's the coursework look like? And HCOL 85 really seamlessly helps you adjust to college. It's a transitional class that makes you ask those bigger questions and start to evolve yourself as a scholar. So one thing I like to describe it as is, because you do get an English credit for HCOL 85, which is awesome, but it's not an English class, in my opinion. Like, yes, there's essays, there's reading, but that comes with most classes. So I like to say, if say in high school you had to write an essay about a book you read, and that essay would ask you to describe 3 literary devices that the author uses. So say you pick like simile and whatever else. Where the HCOL 85 class starts to help you grow as a scholar is now, instead of just listing out those literary devices, it will tie back into how do those literary devices develop the argument of the piece or communicate a certain idea. So it's very interesting to kind of, it has to be like a brain flip. I know at least for me it was, to where now it's okay to question things. It's okay to explore things. It's okay to be confused about things. And that's something that HCOL 85 really like helps build over the course. So I definitely encourage you, like, don't stress too much about it in the sense of, you know, am I good? I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know if my words will be right. That's what the whole point of the course is to explore and to grow. It's not to like rank you, if that makes sense, because you're all already brilliant. So I hope that all makes sense. And my little HCOL 85 holds a special place in my heart. And I think especially now that the course is so current with what's going on, it's going to become even more meaningful. And I think you'll look back on HCOL 85 and be like, I am so grateful I had that experience in my undergrad career.
Yeah, thanks, Tessa. And I would just jump in really briefly to say two things. One, the peer mentors really are, I think they're the best advisors on campus. There's no pseudo advising, right? They really are incredible at what they do. They are like the heart and soul of the Honors College in a lot of ways. And we will refer, as advisors, we will refer you to peer mentors continually, right? We will put you in touch with many different peer mentors for many different reasons. They really do a wonderful job. So thank you just for speaking to that, Tessa. And I really appreciated what you said, Tessa, about like embracing the challenge, right? Embracing the most difficult parts, the parts that don't feel natural or organic as you're adjusting academically, intellectually, socially, and in so many different ways, right? That's really the beauty of it, is that's where growth comes from. So I think that's really powerful.
And I really like how much you like HCOL 85. Like, you know, that makes me like, I can go to bed happy now. So thanks Tessa.
Yeah, I mean, it could definitely be a little like, when you're in it, it's can be like, you don't appreciate it as much. But now I look back on it and I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful I was able to take that class, because it prepared me for so much down the line.
Yeah, that's great. And that's kind of the method of it too. You know, in some ways it can feel like you're, you know, while it is meant to be a transitional class, sometimes what we're reading and talking about can make you feel like you're thrown in the deep end. But you know, we're all there together trying to figure it out. And you know, I think the nice thing about this semester's version of the first year seminar is your faculty members are also getting thrown into the deep end too. We've completely revised the course. We're all, you know, dealing with some of this material for the very first time, and we're going to learn it together. And that's really exciting to all of us. So with that, we really want to hear from all of you with questions that you all have about the Honors College experience, about the first year seminar, questions that have come up during the reading, things that we can help with. You know, for the most part, you know, the questions that have to do with what campus is going to look like in response to COVID have been answered successfully and in a pretty you know, pretty thorough fashion on the FAQ page at UVM and in other sources. We're happy to answer them as best we can, but we're going to probably defer you to the experts who are planning the return to campus if those are the sort of questions you have. But if there's anything Honors College related, from the seminar to you know, the experience, that's what we're here for now. So feel free to either chime in verbally or in the chat, and and you know, I'm glad that Scott and Tessa are here so that they can cover for me if my voice goes.
Don't be shy. You can unmute yourself and ask. You can throw it in the chat. You can do both.
Right. And I'll tell you something that I do in each of my classes, and you'll get this opportunity. You'll get this opportunity if you're in my section. Like I tell my class, you can ask me anything. And I've never had a class that has ever asked me something that I either couldn't or wouldn't answer. So that's your challenge. Find something that I say I'm not going to answer that. But really, any question is fine by us. There is a question from Sam to us: is what do the first week or two of school look like in terms of work? So Tessa, I'm going to let you weigh in from the perspective of stuff outside of the Honors College. From the perspective of the Honors College, the way that we start the first couple of weeks is we're going to be talking about the book you're reading, the Ghost Map, for the first couple of classes, 2 or 3, depending on whether you're doing the class on Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're also going to talk about some strategies for writing, and I'm not going to go into it now because as Tessa said, for some colleges, the Honors College class is your English class, but for every student, it's your first year writing and information literacy class. So we're really trying to develop your skills as a writer. And one of the reasons why we assign the Ghost Map, not just because of the topic or because of the way it deals with how knowledge is interdisciplinary, is because it's a really good piece of writing. If you haven't started yet, what you'll find when you start reading is like there's a really exciting hook to the book, and the hook is like this underbelly of London that is going about like dealing with all of the waste and refuse of London, and it's a really cool way to enter into the world that this book creates. We want you to be good writers like Stephen Johnson is, and so we're going to spend some of our first couple of weeks talking about what good writing is all about. How to write well, and to get your ideas across when you're not just required to do the 5-paragraph essay, where you have an introduction and 3 body paragraphs, and then in the conclusion you say what you did for those 3 paragraphs. That's what we're trying to break you of that habit. I see some cheers around the screen. And it's hard to do because you've been trained to do one type of writing, and we're gonna train you to do some different types of writing that are specific to your field. So that's really what the first 2 weeks look like. Tessa, do you want to talk about what they look like just in general for students?
Sure. Typically, I'm not sure how everything will work now, so I'm just going to go off of what I've experienced in the past. But typically, day 1 of any class that you have, the professor will introduce themselves to you and also go over the syllabus. So every class will have a syllabus, and which just outlines the expectations for the course. Some professors even provide a course list of exactly what's happening each and every day. That's where all your exams will be listed, et cetera, et cetera. So day 1 classes, for the most part, that's a big chunk of the class, if not the whole class. Like Monday classes are a little shorter than Tuesday, Thursday classes. So there's always an introduction day. It's a great chance to ask questions if you read through the syllabus and don't understand something. And then the coursework kind of just starts. Most classes tend to have kind of an intro. If they're a course, like a more STEM-based course, they may have kind of, let's go over this concept real quick. We'll be, and maybe do some things that you already know, like say you're in like an upper level math class, you may do a little bit of kind of review and then other classes will just kind of jump right in and say, okay, we're going to do this reading for Friday and we're going to talk about it. So the first week is like really easing in, and I always say the second week is the settling. You kind of get to gauge, how long it's going to be assignments, kind of you really solidify the expectations of the class. And so then by week 3, it's kind of like, all right, back in the swing of things. So yeah, I would say with most classes, it's very transitional, and especially with first years, in my experience, the professors are so helpful to first years. I know day one, I had so many questions and I asked all my professors and I was just like, what about this? What about this? And all the professors and teachers, they all know that you're making this big transition. So they're there to help you with it. You're not just going to be like, they're wanting to help. So definitely reach out, and it will take a little bit to settle, but by week 2, you'll get things down, right, Pat?
Tessa, can I ask you to weigh in on something a little more specific that I've heard concerns about from a couple of first-year students recently, which is students who have, let's say, tested out of, well, any class at this level, right? Students who may be in 100 level courses. In your experience, are professors still pretty mindful of the fact that it's going to be a mix of first years and upperclassmen? Do they still have that kind of feel of like, day one is an introductory class, here's the syllabus, let's go through it together, and then slowly things pick up from there?
Yeah, so in my experience, a professor on the first day will almost always introduce themselves, even if they don't go through the exact like word for word of the syllabus and every single bullet point. They usually lay out their expectations pretty clearly, especially in like bigger lectures where there may be more material that has to get covered. But yeah, 100 level courses may start a little faster in the sense of you may just jump right in day one, start doing work. My advice there, I was in a similar situation, is definitely go talk to the professor and say, hello, my name is, state your name. I'm a first year student. I'm a little, worried about adjusting to college, have any advice kind of thing. And they are almost like 99.999% of the time are always going to help and, point you in the right direction. So it may jump a little faster in the sense of the expectation may be to like, you can do this, like we're going to jump a little quicker through material, but always willing to help. I've been in classes that have first years to seniors to post-backs to, adults that are just taking the class for fun. So yeah, always really helpful, the professors.
Thanks, Tessa. I see a couple of registration-related questions that I think I can answer pretty quickly.
Yeah, Scott, do you want to kind of bundle those as best you can and take those?
Sure, yeah. So let's see. So Anja asked, for the on-campus option, how do we know which class registration group we are in? Day one priority versus priority within class versus all. So most of you are going to be priority in class. You can check what your registration day and time is in my UVM. If you log into my UVM and go to the Registrar tab, and then Tessa, can you bail me out from, I forget halfway from there, where you actually see your assigned day and time?
I believe there's a like a tab for it on the side. So when you go to register, there's the box on the upper right that has a bunch of different options listed, and there'll be like a big green box that says add, drop, withdraw for the actual courses, and then options under there where I believe you can check if you have holds and your registration time at the same time.
Perfect. Thank you. That's super helpful. So that's how you can check, right? That will tell you the exact day and time that you have registration, that registration opens for you. It won't call it day one versus priority within class, but it'll tell you the actual day and time that you're eligible to log in. All of you should have at least priority within class. It's possible some of you may have day one. If you're an athlete, you will. If you have accommodations through Student Accessibility Services, you will. And then once the academic year starts, as a first year HCOL student, you will have day one priority, which goes first. That's not the case this time around. If you have trouble finding your registration time, feel free to email me, email Martha, or text your peer mentor. We'll help you find it. And then the next question from Hallie, hi Hallie, is where is the best place to see which classes are being held as hybrid versus fully online? So if you're in the schedule of courses, the column that says attribute, ATTR, it'll say in-person, remote, or mixed, or some of them will say online, which means fully online for students studying from home. Hybrid is mixed, right? So if it's mixed, what you need to know next is if you're at home versus on campus, there's different implications. If you're at home, some mixed courses are open to you, some are not. I'm sure you've seen this in messages from the provost and other areas. If you have more detailed questions about that, definitely reach out to me. You want to click on the course on the CRN, and then it should say at home, ATHM. That means it's available to at-home students. I realize that wasn't the question, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. Let's see, are there other registration ones? So when will we find out? Good question from Ethan. So I'm skipping over just to be able to bundle some of the registration related ones. Ethan's question is, when will we find out the days and times of our classes that don't have an assigned meeting time yet? I don't know the answer to that one. Some of them won't have an assigned meeting time, right? If they're online courses, that means they're asynchronous and won't have an assigned time. It means that you do the work on at your own pace. Well, not your own pace. You have to do it at a pace from a week-to-week basis, at a certain pace. But you do it on your own schedule. If courses haven't been assigned meeting times yet and they're not online, that's a little trickier. You can follow up with me or with the registrar's office if you have more detailed questions about that. Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna take the one about the prompt for the first writing assignment. Abigail asked, can you please explain the essay prompt a little more? What are you looking for in our essays? All right, that's a great question. And you know, the writing prompt is fairly open-ended, and that's by design. We want to see what type of writer you are when you come through the door, and we want to see what type of thinker you are, and to develop your strengths, to work on some of your writing challenges, to sharpen your observational and your argumentation skills. So it's a little bit open-ended to give you the opportunity to do three things that I think are fundamental to all good writing: to make an argument, to use evidence in your argument, and to demonstrate your proficiency with style. And what does that mean? So we've asked you to read the whole book, The Ghost Map, and then take a look, maybe for the first time, maybe again at this thing that you never really read at the outset of a book, the epigraph, and really think about why that epigraph is the entree to this book about the London cholera epidemic. You don't have to do external research. If you're interested in who Walter Benjamin is, you should probably look him up. He's a very interesting guy. Like I said, he's one of my intellectual heroes. But you don't even have to do that. And the quote is pretty meaty and rich without having to do any external research. But what we're asking you to do is to say, how does that epigraph contribute after the fact to your understanding of the story of the Ghost Map? And the epigraph, I'm not going to go into it or tell you how to write the essay, but what we're really asking you to do is to come up with an argument, to say, oh, here's what this epigraph has to do with the book, and to go to specific parts of the book that demonstrate the evidence for your argument, and then to do it in a way that's engaging, to think about a way to engage the reader. In this case, it's going to be your faculty member, and to do it and to do it in a way that's also economical, right? It's really hard. Sometimes it's even harder to write a 750 or 800 word essay than it is to write a 10-page essay. I know that from experience. because one of my jobs before becoming a professor was that I was a film critic in Minneapolis for a bunch of daily and weekly papers. And let me tell you, it's really hard sometimes to convey what a movie is about in 700 to 1,000 words, and do it in a way that isn't going to spoil the ending, but lets people know why they should or shouldn't see it. So it's a skill to develop. And that's, so I'm not going to tell you specifically, Abigail, what we're looking for, because that's what we want to learn from you, what you see in the book and what you see in the quotation. The good news is it's a low stress exercise because it's not graded, and it's going to open up a conversation between you and your professor about what things they're seeing in your writing, what things that could see some development, what things that are really exciting about your writing. So don't get too worried about that there's the answer out there, or even an answer that is better than others. It's pretty wide open to see how you think when confronted with an open-ended question. That it ties to something that Wyatt asked, which is about learning to write for our fields, was mentioned earlier on. Does this mean we'll have flexibility to play to our strengths or majors when writing? I think the answer is yes, but yes, you'll have an opportunity to do lots of different types of writing. It's not that we will necessarily have everyone write an essay in the style appropriate to their field. But one of the things that we do help people with is getting used to citation style and citation format. And most of the faculty members in the Honors College, we don't have a standard style we use. We want you to learn the one that you're likely going to be using in your scholarly life going forward, and to get comfortable with it. So whether it's APA, or MLA or Chicago, find the one that you feel good about and that you think you're going to be using, and get used to it. That said, we're also gonna call attention to things that are stylistically appropriate to one field, but maybe not stylistically appropriate to another field. I come from the humanities, and in the humanities, you never use passive voice, or you're not supposed to use passive voice. For those of you in the sciences, like when you write a lab report, it's all passive voice, right? It was observed that, it could be seen that. It's like, it makes me want to tear my hair out, right? So we're going to talk about what those differences are, how things that are appropriate to one field are maybe not appropriate to another field. So there'll be a lot of talk and a lot of different exercises that we cook up to do things in a certain style. I always, because I was a film critic, assign a movie review. And a movie review is a really hard thing to write, it turns out. So we'll do lots of different exercises to help with your writing. And one of the first exercises we'll do is we're going to ask you to rewrite that first essay, so that whatever you come up with, it's going to be an opportunity to do one of the most important parts of writing, which is rewriting. All right, Tessa, I'm going to put you on the spot for the first part of Jonah's question. What's a less talked about challenge of the transition to college that students might not be aware of? And I can take the second part.
Okay. I think one of them that isn't necessary, I think is often underestimated, I think would be a better phrase, is potentially the social aspect. And not in the sense of it's hard to make friends, because a lot of people are able to find friends, but it's a feeling of like, I'm alone, in the sense of, I may have friends, but they're not stressing about this assignment like I'm stressing out about it, or they're not dealing with this thing that I'm dealing with, or the university feels so big compared to my really, really small high school that I don't know where to go when I need something. And so I know I personally experienced that. I came from a really, really small town. I graduated with 48 kids in my class. So that's really, really small. And so that's something I personally underestimated, was the feeling of I'm alone. But fun fact, so many people are also feeling that same way. And that's something I found out when I actually went to my peer mentor about it. And I said, oh, I'm feeling, you know, like really overwhelmed about this. And I'm the only one stressing out about this and no one else is. And, you know, she was able to point me to different resources. And I realized, oh, a lot of people feel this way. So I think that the transition can sometimes be underestimated in that it's like, you know, you're out there alone. You may have grown up with the same people, you know, your whole life, and now you're starting this new adventure, and it can be a little daunting. But seek comfort in that so many others are going through that same experience and may just not vocalize it, or it may not be obvious. And definitely, you know, don't be afraid to reach out to someone. The peer mentors, like I said, I went to my peer mentor and it helped me so much. So definitely reach out to us if you're comfortable. And yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. And I'm actually gonna bring one from a parent perspective that I didn't realize until I was the parent of a college student. So my oldest is now a rising sophomore, and I don't think I realized that you know, one of the most important relationships in college is the relationship with your parents, which undergoes a fundamental transformation when you go to college, right? You've probably, you know, with your family, you know, your caregiver, your parent, your guardian, you've probably been in pretty regular contact with them, seen them face to face on a day-to-day basis. You know, whether it's a good relationship or you know, a challenging relationship, it's going to change absolutely when you go to college. And you know, I can tell you from a parent's perspective that your parents, guardians, caregivers, they are freaking out about what you're up to, what you're doing, that you're thriving and successful when you're in college. And so, you know, what I learned is that there are all sorts of ways of managing that. My son, I think it's fair to say that I got more Uber receipts from him than I got texts his first year of school. Like, he did not communicate all that much. And, you know, I had to come to grips with the fact that he wasn't going to be telling me everything he was doing, and I wasn't going to get regular checkups and check-ins unless I checked in with him. And we had to negotiate that. On the other hand, a lot of his friends, we would talk to their parents, and they would be communicating with the parents like hourly, right? And the parents were freaking out because they thought, like, oh, why are they talking to me all the time? Aren't they making friends? Aren't they, you know, like, are they homesick? You know, so you're gonna find that relationship actually needs some care, you know, and I think a good thing, and I'll say this not from a parent perspective now, but from a dean's perspective, like, keeping the lines of communication open with your family makes for a much smoother experience, because it's much easier to have a conversation with them than when they start to worry or wonder about things and they start contacting Scott or me or someone at the university. So that's, you know, my pro tip as a parent is, like, you know, work on that relationship at the same time you're working on the new social relationships you have. So in the spirit of answering any question, this one isn't so hard because I actually have a good one. What experience have I had that is closest to Johnson's description of London? In high school and my first couple of years of college, I did construction jobs, some of them in row homes in Wilmington, Delaware, that we were rehabilitating, one of which had its sewer line back up into the basement, and I had to muck out the basement that had a sewer back up into it. So I had a very similar experience to Johnson's description in the first part of the book, because I was, you know, maybe not as bad off as the night soil man, but that was something I don't want to revisit.
Dave, you've lived 9 lives, haven't you?
Yeah, more than one or two. All right, so a couple more questions. transferring AP credit, Scott, you can chime in here, but it's a pretty simple process. You work through the transfer credit office. Once your scores are in, and I think, I don't know how it worked this year, but I think around July 15th, most of the scores are in. It happens pretty smoothly. Some of you will find out that your standing is not as a first-year student anymore, but as a sophomore, because you've taken a lot of AP credits. At the end of the day, it doesn't mean that much, because they're not graded credits, but they can help loosen up your schedule down the line sometimes.
Yeah, and I would add a couple of things. Well, first of all, these are great questions. So the way that you contact the registrar is just registrar@uvm.edu. So let me drop that in the chat.
Somebody already put it in, Scott.
Oh, perfect. Oh, great. Thank you, Murphy. That's great. See, you can always rely on honors college students. This is great. The other piece that I want to name very much up front is it's super, super normal every single year for students to need to change their schedules based on AP scores as late as mid-August, right? And we heard months ago that there were going to be delays from the College Board related to AP scores getting reported, getting delivered, so to speak, to universities around the country. So any given year, like Dave said, mid-July is the time when scores are in. This year may be a little bit different. I honestly haven't heard recent updates about the timeline, so I'm not sure what the latest news is there, but I know that students are just starting to contact me now about getting scores. How they work, so when you applied to UVM, you had the option to report AP scores with your application. You had already taken AP exams at that point and gotten scores. Anything that you've taken since you applied, you need to have reported separately. And I will fully own that I'm not an expert on this, but usually you do end up having to, especially if you took AP exams as recently as June, which I know many of you did, you will have to go through the College Board and resend your scores and pay a fee. I think it's $5 or $7 to have all those scores sent in, so that you then can make adjustments to your schedule in August with the assistance of probably a student services advisor in your home college. Those are the folks who are best equipped. Martha and I can also lend a hand with some of that. Sometimes we're a little easier to get in touch with. It can be faster by that. But the student services folks in your home college are really best equipped to manage in the weeds what you should be doing based on your AP scores and how you should change your schedule. Transfer Affairs is the go-to office for AP score questions, right? Transfer Affairs is a kind of a subset of the Office of the Registrar. You can contact them at transfer@uvm.edu. They do outstanding work. One thing I will say is they process a high volume of emails always, right? Now we're all processing an unusually high number of emails, but Transfer Affairs always has a lot of email traffic. So be as specific as you can, right? With any information. If you need lots of information, ask lots of questions. You'll get emails from them very efficiently. You'll get exactly what you asked for. Just flesh out your questions if you need some more context, or rely on me or Martha or your student services team in your home college to understand the broader context of the kind of nuts and bolts information that you get from Transfer Affairs. I think that covers it. I'm just going to take the liberty of 45 seconds to just answer the previous question about the less talked about challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's that much less talked about. Honors college students are amazing. You all are amazing, right? I am inspired every single day by my advisees. What I would love for all of you to work on is knowing when to ask for help, right? You have a support system at UVM. You have a support system at home, like Dean Jenemann was saying, right? You also have one on campus. In fact, you have a whole network of support systems. If anything, it can be a little bit overwhelming how much support there is for you on campus. Students sometimes leave my office with a list of 6 or 7 offices to contact, right? And I'm not going to do that if you're already feeling overwhelmed coming into my office, but just know that Martha and I are here. We care about you as students and as human beings. And we want to be supportive to you academically, co-curricularly, personally, right? We are really here to lend an ear when you need it. So the transition to college is not always easy, as Tessa put it, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to support you.
And that goes double for your faculty members, I would say. You know, one of the things I'm always amazed by is, you know, all of your faculty members will have office hours. They'll you know, their contact information, email address, phone number will be on the syllabus. And you know, the number of times I sit in office hours and nobody shows up, you know, I'm not one to get maudlin and lonely, but like, you know, sometimes I just sob because you know, no one comes to visit me. You know, your faculty members are there for you. Like, we love having conversations about the stuff our class is about. That's why we got into these fields, right? Like, because we love these topics. And if you're struggling with a class, or even if you're really excited about a class, go see your faculty member, have that conversation. You know, we always really love talking about the thing that we're also passionate about. So don't ever hesitate to use your faculty member as a support.
I just chime in on a couple things real quick. Also, along the transfer AP credit line, I believe on the transfer office's website, there is like a PDF guide that has like a general outline of typically how those credits will transfer into a UVM curriculum. It's not a surefire way, like a sure thing that they're gonna transfer that way, but that can give you a good idea, like, oh, I got this score on my AP Chem, maybe I won't have to take that class. So I would definitely peruse that website a little bit, because some of your questions may already be answered. And also along the lines of like HCOL students like needing to ask for help, one aspect I love about college, another underestimated thing, is you're not really like competing anymore. And what I mean by that is, in like high school, you know, you're working up to getting to college. And I know, like, at my school, it being so small, it was a really big academic competition to who's going to be valedictorian, who's going to be in the top 10, et cetera, et cetera. And it was all about the numbers. College, in my experience, has not been like that at all. It's about who you are as a person, who you want to be as a person, and that growth, and really being a scholar, asking questions. And yes, like, there are certain numbers that you want, or certain things will have requirements. So I'm not saying you shouldn't try or anything, but I just more mean, like, it's now about you and this fun adventure, and not so much like metrics anymore, at least in my experience. So yeah, I just wanted to say that real quick, that college that's another thing that's not really talked about, is it's not that hyper competitiveness like there was in high school. Like, people don't ask each other what they get on exams, and like, oh, what's your GPA? Like, I got that all the time in high school. Me and my friends would always talk about it. I've never talked about it in college once. So if you are worried about that, don't sweat it.
All right, so I'll take the next question. Does taking an online class, this is from, and if I mispronounce your name, you can please correct me, is it Freya? Does taking an online class instead of a mixed remote class put you at a disadvantage in any way, or is it a matter of preference? I honestly think that there are no differences in quality or engagement in the online experience or the in-person experience. You know, one of the things that I found, because I've been sitting on my yoga ball in front of this computer screen for 6 months, is that I have, in some ways, better more sustained and more engaged conversations with students, coworkers, colleagues, using this format than I often did in person in classes. Some of it is that you can read, assuming that you practice good, Zoom or Teams or Skype etiquette, which is, have your screen on when you're engaging with someone. Make sure that you're not, looking at your phone or looking at your second screen while you're having that conversation. I actually find that those experiences are pretty rich when everybody is participating simultaneously. So I think that, for some classes and for some professors and for some students, the opportunity to be in an online environment is a really great opportunity. We have faculty members who are have immunity issues, but like they are super excited about the possibility of having a class, or engagement much like the one we're having now, where we can all talk to one another. And the nice thing is that because of the way that the systems we use are set up, I can, in a class of 20 or 21 students, I can see everybody simultaneously. And you can see everybody else if you use the gallery view. And it's actually really cool because sometimes when you do a seminar, you miss what students are really getting or experiencing because you're looking at one person sequentially, and now I can look at everybody simultaneously and I can see like, oh, these people are engaged, or these people are totally bored, or like, oh my God, like, don't you remember you're on screen? Don't pick your nose. There's all these things that happen, in this environment that enhance the experience. So I really do think, in answer to the question, it's two different modes, but one is not necessarily better or worse than the other.
Yeah, and I would chime in just to say, I've been really impressed with how my rising sophomores are really diving into, this is important to do as a college student, period, right? And it's something that we actually talk a lot about as advisors in the Honors College, but it's so important to know what your learning style is, right? How do you learn best? So if asynchronous work is actually more advantageous to you, if not having to be, in certain places at certain times and do quite as much synchronous work, if that's great, then like maybe a fully online course is a good option for you. If that's not the case, then there are another series of questions, right, as to whether an online course is the best thing for you. But put some thought into that, right? Like, you're going to be asked that by a number of folks on campus. How do you learn, right? How do you prefer to learn? How do you learn best? What feels best, right? What's most organic? And on the other side, what's most challenging, right? Like, and what goes into those challenges, right? Is it something you can tweak and then it totally writes its own, you write the ship yourself, or is it really just something that is going to be more challenging for you? Dave, I think we missed one question that I think you'd be great for. Wyatt asked, learning to write for our fields was mentioned earlier on. Does this mean we will have flexibility to play to our strengths / majors when writing?
Well, I kind of covered that a little bit, Scott, when I talked about the different types of writing we talk about in the class. And it's not that we would necessarily, have assignments appropriate to every major. At the same time, we are, talking about all sorts of different fields of inquiry. So the GOES map gets right into, biology and medicine, which understands the world in a very different way than philosophy does, and writes about the world in a very different way that philosophy does. And certainly, then when we're talking about public health a little bit later in the semester, that's going to look different too. So we're not necessarily going to tailor it to every single major on campus, but the way that the writing assignments in HCOL work is that we do kind of ask you to step into the head of these different fields, or step into the discourse space of these different fields as you're doing your writing. But if I like to get fairly creative in some of the things that I have students do. And I think most of my colleagues who are teaching this class likewise have some great ways of getting at how to build your writing skills in all sorts of different registers.
Yeah, and I would just echo again something that we said kind of closer to the beginning, and maybe ask Tessa to reflect on this again more. But there's something really powerful and really unique about being in a room with other students from so many different majors, right? Especially in your first year, it's a common course that everybody in the room, you're going to be in such a conglomeration of different majors. And if you look at the sophomore seminars, I've heard multiple folks refer to them as like the gem of the university when it comes to courses, just because professors really want to be in that environment where students are coming at the material from a lot of different areas. So I don't know, Tessa, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, what I really love about, another thing I like about HCOL 85 is because you'll have a mix of different people in your seminar from different majors, different colleges. Everyone will have different experiences, but you're all reading the same material, is you have the opportunity to discuss something that you may have not caught. You may have, like, whoa, that's so true, or I don't know if I agree with that. Like, it really opens the door to bigger discussions versus if everyone was the same exact major, it may not, people may only pick up on the same sorts of things. So that's really cool. And also, like, looking ahead, the other honors college classes that you'll take in the spring of your first year and in the fall and spring of your sophomore year, those classes are really awesome. I took a history of India class my sophomore fall, and none of us were history majors. So it offers a really unique perspective to sit and discuss maybe a historical piece, or in this case, a book, or maybe you're talking about the HIV/AIDS epidemic later on in 85. And so it's really cool to like literally just learn from other people, or maybe they caught something. That being said, it's really helpful when people like do the readings in class and participate, because you can't really have a diverse perspective or a really good conversation if only like 2 of the 20 people actually did the reading. So I highly encourage you to please do the assignments, because not only will it help you, but it also helps your classmates. Yes. And like Dave said, go to office hours. They're the best thing ever. I was really apprehensive my first semester because I was like, oh, I don't know what these are going to be like. Best things ever. Office hours, like, are so helpful. They're so fun. Definitely go. And I'm not just saying that. I genuinely mean it. Office hours are so helpful.
Right, and you learn that your faculty members are human beings. Like, most of us have pictures of our family and our kids in our offices. We have stupid posters up about stuff. You learn a lot about your faculty member just by sitting in their office and looking at their walls and their bookshelves. Sometimes that can be a little scary, but more often than not, it's a real insight into who these people are. There was one other AP question. APs do not make you exempt from the general education requirements. So the university, there is a general education requirement. You've got to do your first year writing class. You've got to do a couple of diversity classes. You've got to do a course in the humanities, a couple science classes, and so on. But APs are not going to necessarily get you out of those. Is that true in all cases, Scott? I was thinking about language. So an AP class wouldn't get you out of your language requirement.
Yeah, it's not true in all cases. You can satisfy some distribution requirements with AP scores. Even in those, I want to say one thing about that though. Even in those cases, you want to be thoughtful about whether you want that to be the case. Mm-hmm. Right? If you want to be a Spanish major and you're fulfilling, right, Spanish 101 with an AP or something of that nature, you want to think long and hard about whether it's actually better for you to take college level Spanish courses I mean, I guess if you're a major, it's okay to jump ahead because you're going to satisfy the distribution requirement. But you can satisfy some. It's always best to double check your degree audit. If you haven't experienced your degree audit yet, you're in for a treat. It's a hugely valuable tool that can tell you a lot. It's really a great way to kind of advise yourself in a lot of ways and see what gets satisfied by this or that. So if you have questions about this, feel free to reach out to Martha or me. Again, your home college's student services team is the best resource on this stuff, but we're also happy to get you started on any questions that you have related to these things. And then anything we can answer, we'll always refer you on to the right person at the college.
Also along those lines, something to keep in mind if you're on a pre-professional track, for example, I'm on a pre-med track, some graduate programs or schools like medical schools, dentistry schools, all, professional schools, some want students to take classes in college. So some colleges, like say you're going to medical school, one medical school may be okay with, oh, they had AP credit for, I don't know, one class, and that's fine. Another college may not accept those AP credits. So if you're a pre-professional, whatever that may be, pre-law, pre-med, pre-vet, et cetera, definitely I would recommend meeting with your advisors about that, or reaching out to like the health professionals group, and they'll be able to help you navigate if you really should take one class at a college level, or if the AP is going to be okay. That's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Tessa. And really, it's hard to give blanket advice, but that is one of the things that is given as blanket advice. If you plan to be pre-med or any pre-health major, or do a pre-health track rather, you should take, for example, Chem 31 at UVM. You should not rely on AP credits for chemistry. There are other courses that are similar. If you have more detailed questions about that, get in touch with an advisor. But med schools really like to see that you've taken those courses in college and during the academic year and not in the summer. That's also important. Great questions.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions that folks have? Straightforward ones, curveballs? I see someone's got their dog with them. Yes, you could absolutely have our emails one more time. So.
I will also, Dave, we had talked about talking about this, and we didn't put it at the top, but if you're wondering who your honors college advisor is, that's going to be coming out soon. There's 2 advisors. We'll be splitting the first year class. If you are in the College of Arts and Sciences with a declared major, Martha Lance will be your advisor. If you're in any of the other 6 home colleges, so the College of Nursing and Health Sciences, Grossman School of Business, College of Education and Social Services, College of Agricultural and Life Sciences, College of Engineering and Mathematical Sciences, and what did I miss?
Rubenstein.
Thank you, Rubenstein, one of my favorites. The Rubenstein School for Environment and Natural Resources. If you're in any of those, you're my advisee. And if you're in the College of Arts and Sciences and undeclared, you're my advisee. So if that's confusing, we will put it in writing soon. You will hear from us directly as your advisors. We just wanted to put that out there. It's decided, so we might as well share it with you. So I'm excited to work with those of you who are my advisees. If you're not my advisee, I'm still excited to meet you and learn about you and how you fit into the community and how the community can meet needs. So questions, if you're my advisee, follow up with me anytime. If you're Martha's, follow up with her anytime. We're excited to work with you.
Yeah. Well, it was great to see many of you. Great to hear your questions. I'm really excited to get back into things in a few weeks and get into the new class. If you have questions that we didn't address or that come up after the fact, please don't hesitate to reach out to us via our email. We're here and available. In the meantime, you know, as I said a lot over the course of the spring, I really hope that you and your families are well, staying safe and healthy, and we can't wait to see you in the fall. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Tessa, for being here tonight, and thanks to you all for joining in.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Send us questions anytime.
Yep.
For joining us.
All right. Thanks all.